Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan. Am I live yet?
Yes.
Hello. Hi, team. Am I live on my live stream? I am live. Great. And do I need to set up Instagram or it's all working great? Um, I am very pixelated here, but I'm told I look good everywhere else, so it won't matter. Hi, it is June 25th, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. I'm Dr. Steve Hassan, and welcome to my live stream. I've been working really diligently to keep up on the latest crazes with the cult of Trump and opining with my expertise in the area of psychological warfare and mind control and brainwashing and how to help people navigate these difficult times where we're being overloaded with information that is chaotic and just causing a tremendous amount of anxiety and chaos and such. Let's start by just saying since last Wednesday, the Trump administration sent stealth bombers and bombed Iran without congressional approval. And Trump said that it was a very successful obliteration of the Iranian nuclear stockpile of materials and the centrifuges and the information from Tulsi Gabbard and from unknown leaked sources is that that's not true. They moved the uranium material before the strike, and that with all the bombs that were delivered, they did not accomplish that mission. So that's interesting. Right now, Trump is over in Europe talking to NATO, and he continues to uh, not be logical, rational. As a world leader, he is really disintegrating in my view and many other professionals. Want to talk about a whole bunch of things, but most importantly, if you're listening to me and you voted for your GOP politician that is currently in the Senate, deliberating on the abomination bill, um, and you are now questioning whether or not Trump has any clue of what's going to help Americans. He wants to help the wealthy, the super wealthy. But if you're starting to realize this isn't the case, I especially want a message to you. Welcome. And it is really hard to realize that we trusted the wrong person and that the administration is really out to destroy the United States of America and its people. I can't stand that the media keeps calling it the BBB. I'm not even going to mention it because when we're dealing with psychological warfare, you don't repeat the enemy's loaded language on things. We want to call it the abomination bill. Why? Because it's going to add an estimated $3.4 trillion to $3.7 trillion. And it's going to take away Medicaid from some 13, and I heard upwards of 17 million Americans who depend on it, closing many rural hospitals. Oh, I see. Question: did Steve hear about the letter Pam Hemphill got from Mike Pence? No, I didn't, Jerry. Um, but Pam is a granny who was arrested at January 6th violent insurrection attempt, who was spent 2 years in, excuse me, 2 months in jail, refused the pardon that Trump gave to all of the convicted felons who are now out, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and others. And for all we know, these people are now wearing masks and have been deputized or are just on their own authority, not knowing anything about police work or due process or habeas corpus, tracking down people and throwing them into vans, and very upsetting stuff. And the Opus Dei Supreme Court SCOTUS people voted to allow Donald Trump to deport Americans to third countries, countries that they didn't come from. So very concerning about that. Can't read the screen, completely pixelated. So I'm going to ask my team, please put it in the chat thread so I can read it. And I will continue just commenting. So Elon Musk brought in this kid into Doge and into our most private, sensitive computers, and he just resigned from Doge. And it turns out he was involved with helping criminals do security, and that was harassing an FBI agent. This guy named Big Balls was his thing. I got it. Philip Blair says, what gives you hope that doesn't get you just set up for frustration and despair? So, great question. What I want to say is that one of my philosophical positions, something I've learned a long time ago as a therapist, is to focus on what's within our control and not spend a lot of time and energy on things outside of my control. Also, to be in the here and now and not spend a lot of time worrying too much about a future that hasn't arrived yet, or dwelling on past events because it's already happened. And so the best posture that I can recommend for all my listeners and followers is to be here now and be very zen, be very go with the flow. And instead of, I can't believe they're doing this, and as if it was going to change anything, just expect them to behave, them meaning the cult of Trump and all of the administration that have sworn loyalty. Just expect them to act against common sense, rule of law, democratic principles, separation of church and state, and understand that a lot of what's happening is to distract us from really centrally important things. For example, there's a line in this abomination bill that basically neutralizes judges' ability to issue injunctions against Trump policies and actions, which will basically be a pass for anything they decide to do. So we want to pay attention, like that's a really big thing, and we want to make it very public, and we especially want to approach people who have voted for Trump, who still stand by Trump, and ask their, what do you think about the judges? Because Trump said he would abide by the judges, and now they want to slip something into this abomination bill that says he doesn't have to listen to judges. So that's a biggie. I don't know if you also heard, but Trump talked about reinstituting a draft of 18-year-olds into the military. That's also like not being reported very widely. And for those of you who haven't seen my interview about Belter, the man who allegedly assassinated the Minnesota lawmaker and her husband, he got recruited as an 18-year-old at St. Cloud State University into a cult of the William Branham Christ for the Nations, and evolved into the New Apostolic Reformation. And I interviewed his former floor mate and baseball buddy who said he didn't get converted the year before because he experienced him as a funny 18-year-old talking about girls and going to baseball practice. And then he got invited to a dinner off campus, and then he became a zombie, according to Jeff. So check that out on my YouTube, Dr. Steve Hassan. Let's see. We have another thing from Instagram user Lasky Linda. Hello from Sacramento, California. Tell us what we need to do. This is just insane. So there are lots of people with Substacks and social media. We can't follow them all. There's some people that I especially like to follow, but choose your lanes. Like, don't overwhelm yourself, but like choose your lane. And if you're following me because you're a former member or because you've read my books or taken my courses, and want to know how to help freedom of mind, we are on a very limited budget, and we're trying to encourage people to subscribe to our Substack, to our YouTube, and we would like to get more volunteers to help us write blogs and do content. If you know any influencers, tell them to invite me on their platform if they have a very large following. That would be awesome. And I would just like to say that for me, having been recruited and brainwashed in the Moonies and gotten out and been doing this full time for 49 years, if you haven't read The Cult of Trump yet, it's on audio too. Start reading it. It'll give you a framework for Edward Bernays and all the major bad actors who've been planning for 50 years to bring about today. And we are massive. We had No King's protest. I did see a notice that they want to do another massive national protest for July 4th. So I don't know any details if it's going to be as organized, but we want to show the politicians who have sworn loyalty to Trump and his acolytes that this is not going to go well for them, and that we are Americans. We're spoiled. We want freedom. We want freedom of speech. We don't want to have our social media checked if we posted something critical against the cult of Trump. Can you imagine what they're going to see when they're on my phone? It's kind of funny, but damn, I wrote the frickin' book. Read it. I've been messaging and doing interviews for years about how destructive Donald Trump is. So for my team, keep putting messages into the thread, please, because my screen is totally pixelated, and we're trying a program that I don't know what's going on with it, but the key is that it's getting the message out. We're recording it, and this recording will go up on my YouTube, which is going to be awesome. Yeah, I wrote down some more notes that I wanted to talk about. Trump wants to declare the Insurrection Act. He wants to militarize our military against peaceful American citizens. The military doesn't want to do this. They do not want to disobey orders, but they're also bound to follow the Constitution and rule of law and follow their consciences. So we're heading quickly into a point where either a lot of people are going to start realizing we made our bed with the wrong political leaders and start speaking up. I'm seeing a lot more on social media about this, where people, especially vets who are losing Veteran Administration benefits, are or possibly losing their Medicaid even, they're really upset. And so, and Brian Johnson saying, reading your book now. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you. Yeah, and if you haven't checked out my social media, I'm Cult Expert. Instagram, I think I have 153,000 people now. That's my biggest platform. Haven't grown at all. I've lost people ever since Musk bought Twitter and X. But I continue to want to share my expertise. I want to rally people who are former members to share their story. I see another message from Instagram from Ruby. I'm so tired people lacking the courage to face these problems and engage. I get the whole, like, we need to protect our mental health, but to what cost? I agree. I think everyone has to take responsibility for their own self-awareness and their own affect regulation. I think the most important thing is getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, turning off your phone an hour to two before going to sleep at night, eating, exercising, being in nature. Our brains are not meant to be on pixels for 8 to 10 hours a day. And we do a lot better when we're in nature, listening to birds and feeling and enjoying our environment. Speaking of our environment, hey, the heat dome is here. You think there's global warming? I don't know. Right now in Northampton, I think it's 93, but it feels like 102. But I think it's supposed to break tomorrow. The temperatures are supposed to get better. But you know what, folks? All of this disinformation against climate change has been pumped out by, guess what? The Koch Corporation, by fossil fuel companies and countries that don't apparently realize we're living on one biosphere, one Earth, and we're all going to be affected. And that there's more to life than just having another $1 billion. What about your children? What about your grandchildren? And I want to say thank you to George Conway. George wrote the foreword to this new release edition. I wrote an afterword that came out before the election. He's now starting another group encouraging, I think it's called Home of the Brave. And he's encouraging people to have courage and speak truth to power. And so I became one of the early adopters of that. Oh, and I want to thank Nancy Wallace for a super chat, $5. Every little bit helps. Really appreciate that. But yeah, check out Home of the Brave and check out my interview that's coming out this coming week with Monty Mader, who is a former alt-right extremist fundamentalist who's now an awesome voice criticizing people who claim to be Christians who don't know the Bible at all. And she's also a very talented singer and songwriter, has a band, and is awesome. I think you're going to really like my interview with her. For those people who subscribe to my YouTube, it's already up. The video is, that is. The Substack blog and the audio podcast will come out on Monday. From Instagram, from J Family Reds, my question is, when will our elected officials finally obey their oath? Great question. All I can say is I believe needs to happen is we need to stop messaging to people who are already understanding the danger of Donald Trump and this administration and Project 2025. And we need to be spending a lot more energy messaging to everyone else, the people who didn't vote, the people who are avowed MAGA people, and don't attack them, don't call them names. Be warm, be friendly, ask them questions that make them think, and be patient. Zip it while you ask the question, let them think about it, be patient, wait for their response, and then ask a follow-up question, because that's how people wake up, is by encouraging them to reflect. Go back in time and reflect. How did you get to where you are now? And you can also ask hypothetical questions like, is there a line in the sand that if it comes, you'll exit? It's always a really handy thing to do to be able to reality test. Let's see, from Geo Tandy, how important is interfaith dialogue at this moment? Peaceful, goal-oriented, friendship-oriented. I think it's central. I think it's so important for people who have spiritual values. You may not be in a particular denomination, but you believe in don't do to others what you don't want done to you, or generically love God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I definitely believe that there's a continuum, like I have my influence continuum. If you haven't seen it already, you can download this for free on freedomofmind.com. Ethical religious groups and authoritarian mind control cults that control behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions and make a pseudo identity that's dependent and obedient. So within that whole continuum, there are ethical, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, etc., and there are extremists. And don't allow the extremists to occupy all the oxygen in the room. Let's see, I got another one from Instagram. Is there a government agency or a group of law experts who can get Trump and his administration out of the White House before every aspect of American life is destroyed? I know a lot of legal experts who, if they had the power, would have done it already. And so I'm not aware of it. People know that Jamie Raskin met with me in person, has read The Cult of Trump and my other books and my doctoral dissertation. He was a constitutional law professor before he ran for Congress and was on the January 6th committee. And I know that he and many other lawyers are filing lawsuits against Trump administration agencies and individuals. But the problem is Opus Dei and the Federalist Society, and Leonard Leo has hacked the Supreme Court. So we have 6 against 3. And I don't know how we're going to reverse that unless we win back the House and the Senate and the White House and create term limits for judges, especially Supreme Court judges, and maybe expand the Supreme Court and get some people in there who are actually representing the public and not just right-wing extremist conservative positions. So the hack that has happened to us, as I wrote in The Cult of Trump, has been in operation to make this happen for 50 years. This was not an overnight thing, and Donald Trump, believe me, is not a mastermind. I heard Bolton recently, he's a moron, was the exact quote that Bolton said. He's uneducated, and when he was asked about Russia, he said Trump's a useful idiot. It wouldn't even elevate him to asset level. I was told that Trump was recruited as an asset back in the 80s, but he just called him a useful idiot to Putin. Let's see, Laura, I do wonder if they will ever stand up to him. It feels like the military is the last bulwark. I think, I hope our military will get rid of Hegseth and will insist on someone who actually knows how to run a huge government agency with actual wisdom and common sense. I posted a video of General Milley talking about Trump as a fascist. This was over the weekend with No King's Day and the military parade, and went viral if you haven't seen it. And it's something, if you have military people in your family, ask them to watch it and ask them what they think, because he was very blatant, and he served in the first Trump White House run, if you remember. Dawn on TikTok gave us gifts. Well, thank you, Dawn. Appreciate you. I would love more people to speak if they have had a firsthand experience with a mind control cult, whether they were raised in one, or they know someone from high school or college that got into one, or they watched documentaries and got very interested. I want more people to talk about the fact that human beings can have their minds hacked and they can wake up and resume very healthy, successful lives and careers. Because that's what I think is going to need to happen. Because anyone who's lost their freedom, like I did in the Moonies, it's worth fighting for freedom. I don't want people telling me what I can think, what I can read, what I can't read, having to ask permission for things. Like, that's not okay. And anyone who came to the US from the Soviet Union or from China or other dictatorships, they know how valuable it is to have lived in a country with relative freedom. Let's see, another one from Instagram. I understand your philosophy of asking good questions, but they are operating off of alternative facts. So let me state categorically, there is no such thing as an alternate fact. It's called a lie. Okay? We really have to start being more aware of words that we use. We don't want to amplify psychological warfare loaded language terms. And the fact that they are dependent on Truth Social or Fox or other social and legacy media just speaks to how much more important it is for people in real life to engage and go slowly, build a relationship with folks, because in the end, truth is stronger than lies and love is stronger than mind control. And I can't tell you how many people have left extremist groups because they were treated nicely and respectfully by people they had been trained to hate and to distrust, because people want respect, they want kindness. And another thing, when you're in a mind control cult and you start questioning or you start opposing what's being said, you know they're all going to turn on you. And that speaks to what's known as conditional love or conditional friendship. We'll be your friend if you believe what we believe and do what we tell you to do. But the minute you cross over that line, they turn on you like rabid dogs. And so in the end, people realize it's not safe to be in an authoritarian mind control group. Let's see, something from YouTube. Thoughts on hopelessness of the DNC. Just found out my progressive rep, Kana, is trading stocks in Palantir as of April. The fascism seems to benefit all of our politicians. Feels hopeless. Yeah, so let me explain that when I wrote The Cult of Trump, I put one of the early authoritarian cults that was started in the Cold War era was a cult called The Family. Jeffrey Charlotte wrote 2 New York Times best-selling books. There's a 5-part Netflix series called The Family. If you haven't watched it, watch it, please. You will see this cult was recruiting Democrats and Republicans into their authoritarian group. And so the Democrats, they can be corrupted. And if you don't know what Palantir is, it's a company by Peter Thiel. Thiel put Vance in as vice president. He's a technocrat. He's a billionaire. And this is a database used by law enforcement that a whistleblower recently said all this data that was hacked by Doge is getting centralized under Palantir, so that we're going to have a version of Chinese communist surveillance state here if we don't put up data privacy boundaries and legislation and stop this extreme stuff. And regarding hopeless, all I can say is we need to resist with all of our abilities and keep fighting, because if we give up, they win. If we self-censor and don't wait for them to censor us, they win. So for me, it gives me hope, because when I do things like this and people say thank you and we get more followers and the message goes out, it makes me want to do more. If nobody was listening, nobody cared, would I get hopeless? Maybe, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to resist. I finished a book recently, by the way, called Red Orchestra by Ann Nelson. She wrote a very important book called The Shadow Network about the Council for National Policy. This is another one of these billionaire private clubs that has been working to destroy democracy. Anyway, the book was about German resistance during Hitler. And I didn't know that there were so many millions of Germans who were actively resisting and sabotaging Hitler and even trying to, assassinate him in different attempts. I knew about some of the assassination attempts. I think there were 45 on him before he killed himself. But the thing is we have to do what we can do. And in the end, we want to look at ourselves in the mirror at night, knowing we contributed even a little bit each day. And that we didn't just go, okay, I'll be a slave. I'll do whatever you tell me. Not an option for me. Let's see, another Instagram. I feel there's a similarity to the civic religion phenomenon that began in the South after the Civil War. Would I be on the right track with that thinking? I'm not sure what you mean by the civic religion phenomenon that began in the South after the Civil War. I can say that the whole effort to stop slavery it still goes on today. If you aren't aware, trafficking law is illegal. Trafficking is illegal around the world because of slavery, because human rights were deemed to be something that all humans should have. I gotta say, I like this Pope who is empowering priests to support immigrants, who's speaking out against bombs and war between Israel and Iran, who is talking about love of Jesus and following Jesus and not these new apostolic reformations. Did you catch the video where they're praying in tongues outside the White House and telling God that they're soldiers and they're going to destroy and smite the enemy? I used to pray like that in the Moonies. The Moonies didn't do tongues, but we used to do what was called audible prayers, and we would tell God what to do and what we were going to do. It was the opposite of humble seeking and beseeching of God. Let's see, TikTok. Laura says, can you speak on the mechanisms that allow for us to have our minds hacked? Sure. So what I want to say is that the human mind adapts. And so if our environment is surrounded by cult members, our minds start adopting the things around us. Is it 100%? No, not everyone will adapt, but most people will if they're not conscious of this propensity to adjust and adapt. We are essentially, as humans, social beings who are emotional. We're not rational and we're not loners. So when people try to portray cult members as weak and stupid and uneducated, it's just not true in my experience. Brilliant minds can get hacked, but if you understand the patterns, and that's why so many people have been helped by reading Combating Cult Mind Control or reading my book Freedom of Mind, which is my guidebook on how to help people who've been radicalized to start reality testing. Check out my course. I have a mini course, by the way. It's $9.95, and I think we're even giving 20% off. It's a 1-hour course on the bite model, and I really want people to internalize and understand how to think behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control, and how by manipulating words, it changes our thoughts. By putting fear inside of people, phobias inside of people, it's controlling them emotionally, right? It's formulaic. And the good news is that it's not permanent. It doesn't erase your real identity, even if you're born or raised in a mind control cult. Let's see, Nancy, what do we know of how prevalent substance abuse is amongst cult recruits? Seems like it would be a vulnerability in that it might inhibit critical thinking. It's very interesting, but we know that terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda was using Captagon, a form of speed that would get people paranoid and give them a lot of energy not to sleep. But most mind control cults don't use drugs. They use sleep deprivation. And I can say that I would say that the most common technique is hypnosis that I see on the internet, but people don't know that it's hypnosis. And people have a very rudimentary understanding of hypnosis. It's not sleep, it's a focusing of attention. And its characteristics is it makes you more susceptible to suggestion, for ideas to be implanted in your unconscious that your consciousness would never agree to. I've recently been seeing on Instagram and on several social media places these AI beautiful women or handsome guys, and they almost never blink, and they count. Look into my eyes. 10, 9. And it's like, hello, can you not feel like your reaction when this is happening? I obviously turn it off immediately or go to the next thing. But many people, especially young people who don't understand what hypnosis is or the dangers of it, this ASMR phenomenon is another example of hypnosis. People who have no mental health training are being taught hypnotherapy to become coaches. It's like, please protect your minds. Your mind is precious. Let's see. From Kayla Lake on YouTube, do you think Trump is intentionally using cult tactics, or is it just his personality? I find it hard to believe he's smart enough to plan all these things on his own. Who is instructing him? Great question. So if you read the Cult of Trump book, you will know that he was raised in a belief system of a cult of Norman Vincent Peale, the power of positive thinking, also connected to New Thought, where you believe it 100%, you don't allow doubts, you don't allow negative thoughts, you do thought stopping and you block all of that. This is the same type of mindset as the prosperity ministers who say if you just believe it or fake it till you make it, BS. So he already had been exposed to authoritarians, and his father, his grandfather, as well as this cult. But he's no genius. He's not thinking in fifth dimension. He was, in my research, was recruited by the Soviet Union in the 80s. His current chief of staff, Susan Wiles, was a paid lobbyist for Putin and Xi before she ran the 2016 election. So he's hearing it from Christian nationalists who want to put God into the White House and destroy the separation of church and state. He's hearing it from the libertarian atheists who want to go to Mars and want to have a network state model where governments don't regulate them, but they control people's minds through satellites and through social media. So there are all these factions that are falling apart now. With the bombing in Iran, there were the isolationists who said stay out of Iran, the others who were like bomb Iran. We should just do regime change and take it over. We need to do more to exploit the fissures, but with the point of view of the people who've been following. If you have a brother, a sister, an aunt, an uncle, a parent, engage them in warm conversation and just say, help me understand. How do you think about things? Let's see, I have another question. This one from YouTube from Carrie Martinez. By the way, we're doing a Spanish edition of Combating Cult Mind Control. We're readying it. We're adding some stories of Latina people who been taken into cults. So stay tuned for that. We do have a Spanish version of the influence continuum, a Spanish version of the bite model, and a Spanish version of my doctoral dissertation for those people who are primarily Spanish reading and speaking. Let's see, Carrie. So we pretty much completely fallen into authoritarianism. What do you think we should brace ourselves for next? Is this really the start of World War III? I don't believe we've completely fallen into authoritarianism yet. I do believe we're in World War III. It was a psychological warfare and cyber warfare. When we can't speak publicly, when all of the critics are arrested or put in jail or sent to El Salvador, then we're looking at authoritarianism Right now, they're trying desperately, and I want to come back to the abomination bill that the Senate is deliberating. And we want to be loud, loud, loud that we don't want more tax breaks for the billionaires. We don't want to lose Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. But even more importantly, I want to say we don't want our government to go into default. So we do want a bill to get passed, because if it goes into default, then the Trump cult can say we can't pay Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security payments because we don't have funding to run the government. So that is something that is very worrying for sure. Let's see. We got another one from Instagram. Thank you so much for tirelessly continuing this work for all of us. You're such a light for so many of us. Thank you. I hope you are taking your own advice and take care of yourself. We need you. I got to admit, I'm pretty burned out, and I am hoping to take some time off in a few more weeks. I'm actually looking for a former member who's a mental health professional to maybe help me with my podcast interviews, who can continue to keep it going. When I take a few weeks off, I would love to go scuba diving again. For me, it's the most relaxing thing that I can do. And I am grateful to my family and friends, and I do really I turn off work at 8 o'clock at night so I can get ready to go to sleep at 10:30 and sleep. Because when I'm up on my phone, I can't sleep, and it's just really being self-aware enough to create boundaries and protect myself. I also love live music. I love dancing and being with friends, eating good food, seeing interesting movies. All of these things are worth doing. Let's see, YouTube, David. So anyway, thank you, Dale Tammy from Instagram, about that. I love hearing that my work is helping folks. Let's see. David said, do you consider Benjamin Netanyahu as a politically cultish leader in the likes of Putin or Ayatollah or Trump as regards becoming more authoritarian compared to past prime ministers and presidents? Well, Dave, you haven't read my book, because I have Netanyahu in the cult of Trump as one of the extremists who have also been influenced by Russia. People forget there was over 1 million Russian emigres that went to Israel. The oligarchs all got Israeli passports, I am told. The 1 million emigres in Israel continue to listen to Russian propaganda. And they grew up in an authoritarian cult, so they're used to a strong leader and the enemy and doing whatever they're told. That and the religious messianic, extremists in the government. I'm a human rights guy, so I'm with the half of Israel that protests against the extremist government and their actions to Muslims and Palestinians. I also believe that there should be a Jewish state. So I'm a two-state solution guy. And so, I use my bite model, and I look at Eric Fromm's Malignant Narcissism. That's chapter 3 of The Cult of Trump. And looking at Netanyahu, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, has feathers like a duck. Very concerning. Let's see, TikTok, Jane the Message. Can you speak more on the dynamics of World War III? How can we try to help it end? Well, you know what BRICS is about, the alliance between China and Russia and India and Brazil. Now that Trump got into power, things have shifted dramatically. Now the United States is not aligned with NATO and Canada. Canada's afraid we're going to invade them. They were always our closest trading partners, allies. And if you listen to its leader now, Carney, he just said, the relationship is over. We can't trust the current government. So it's very, very sad. And if you understand World War III, it isn't necessarily a kinetic war with guns and bombs, but it's psychological warfare that's being waged, that's very deliberate, that's using propaganda, that's using our data that's been collected. Do you know that there are 5,000 data points on every voting American? And that AI and algorithms are being used to influence us, to make us hopeless, or to make us more extreme on the left or the right? Are you aware that this is what's happening? I just finished a book by a Facebook whistleblower. Her name is Sarah Wynne Williams, called Careless People. And in the book, she talks about Zuckerberg not caring at all about morality, about violence, about death, about moderation, and how he wanted to run for president. And she stated categorically she was there when Trump hacked Facebook's algorithms to get him elected in 2016. So I always knew that psychological warfare was being launched. Why? Because Trump is the least qualified person to run a country. He's a failed businessman over and over and over again. He's a sexual abuser over and over and over again. No sane, rational person who looks at the facts would ever trust him, much less elect him president and give him access to our military. So I was sure of it the first time around, and I was very worried about it in 2024 when I learned that, Musk and Thiel and Zuckerberg and Bezos didn't want Biden or the Democrats to regulate them. I knew they were going to put all their resources to make sure they would not be regulated. They would have no accountability. And we need to regulate media for public good. Period. It's just the way it is. Let's see. Madison on TikTok, which of your books do you recommend for tips to effectively communicate with MAGA loved ones? Only one. If you want my opinion, read Combating, then read Freedom of Mind. That's the book that I created to help get people out of mind control cults by empowering them to reality test. Then read The Cult of Trump. Then take my course and use my workbook, Understanding Cults. And subscribe and listen to my interviews. Every week I try to interview someone on the influence continuum. This week we have a forensic psychologist who studies how police can brainwash people to believe they did crimes that they didn't commit. It's fascinating because it's a phenomenon. How could people confess to a crime they didn't commit and even believe that they did a crime that they didn't commit? It's an exercise in undue influence. I'm getting the message. We will start to wrap up. I'm going to remind folks to subscribe to my Substack, Dr. Stephen Hassan. Please sign up for my YouTube members. We're starting to develop premium content for subscribers. Dr. Stephen Hassan is my YouTube channel. And please, if you are an activist online, and you're aware of some, big influencers, whether they're musicians, whether they're poets, whether they're other scholars, um, ask them if they've read The Cult of Trump. Would they read The Cult of Trump? Start a book club. Um, Become educated on this topic and know that you're not alone, that we have a whole community of freedom of mind folks. Because, one of my mottos is it's your mind and only you should control it. So if you find yourself looking outside yourself, tell me what to think, tell me what to believe. Resist that impulse and say, what do I value? What are my beliefs? And let me check the source. What is this person's credentials and expertise? And if they're teaching me something new, does it stand up to scrutiny? And if so, then you can change your mind and adopt it. But I never want people to blindly follow anybody, because we're adults and we should take care of ourselves. So I want to thank my team for helping me with this live stream. I will continue to do live streams as long as I hear from my followers that this is useful. Ask me anything kinds of things. And stay tuned for Monty Mater next week. She is awesome. And I'm hoping Monty and I will do an Instagram live. Well, 2 weeks ago, she said, not this week, next week. And we got 2 more days. I don't know if we're going to pull it off tomorrow or Friday with Monty, but if not, hopefully the following week. And yeah, come to freedomofmind.com. And thanks, everybody. Take care.